For this project, you're going to create some pixel art from a pencil drawing that you find online. So if you didn't read the instructions on the webpage that you should have downloaded a file before starting this video, please go do that now. But here's an example of a search that I did. I ended up settling on this squid character. But what you want for this is a drawing, or it could even be clip art, but what you want is black and white. You don't want it to be colorized at all because you're going to make choices on colors. The project will flow easier if you start with just a pencil sketch or black and white. Like if I add black and white pencil sketch here, and I did video game character. It doesn't have to be a video game character. It can be any sort of simple drawing that you want, and we're going to turn that drawing into pixel art. So if you haven't downloaded an image, please go do that right now and then come back here and pick up with this video. All right, so having said all of that, you guys will never know the struggle that we had to go through, people my age, back when I was in high school and college with this version of Mario running around looking all pixelated like that. And this Mario's from 2008, and that's 15 years ago or more at this point. Who knows what Mario looks like now? I don't know. I don't play that game anymore. But you can see the difference in the artwork. So this is called pixel art, things that look like the early days of Mario. And there was a reason why that's how video games looked a long time ago. And they were so ugly they're almost fashionable because pixel art is coming back into fashion and it's kind of an art style now. But instead of me telling you about it, let's watch a little video together right here, and this guy will explain it. And by the way, this is where I got this tutorial, so you can see the title of it there. If you'd rather watch his video than mine, that's totally fine.
Pixel art, or 8-bit art, gets its name from retro video games. So back in the days, consoles and computers weren't very powerful, and as a result, the artwork that they could render couldn't be very high resolution. And so you get these very pixelated art style, which nowadays has become a style, but back in the days was a necessity for the computing power of these machines. So here you've got this example of a highly sort of rendered artwork done in powerful programs like Photoshop. And on the right, you've got the pixel art equivalent of that. So you can see that obviously drop in resolution, but this has become a style nowadays. Another thing to consider when you're creating a pixel art file is how many pixels you're going to include in the image. So here's 4 examples of some standard sizes.
So you can see the difference between the 4 here. We're going to focus on 64. That's the size we're going to make our image in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and get right to it. So let's open up Photoshop. So go ahead and open up the sketch that you've downloaded. So this is the one that I'm going to work with. And what we're going to end up doing is turning that sketch from this into this and making it look like a pixelated video game character. All right, so let's go ahead and go File, New. We don't need to worry about any of the presets here. Let's go over to the details and let's go ahead and name this right away. So I'm going to put my last name. And I'm going to call this Pixel Art V4 because I think this is the 4th time that I've done it. Make sure that pixels is selected, and we're going to do a width of 64 and a height of 64. So it's going to be a square, exactly 64 by 64 pixels. We want the resolution to be 300 pixels per inch. Color mode should be RGB. I'm not quite sure why some of these are chosen here. And the background should be transparent. Because again, this might be something you actually bring in to a game that you create in this class, either this year or next year. And then go ahead and click Create. Now notice how tiny the image is right here. That's its actual size because it's quite a small image. So we're going to be doing some zooming and things like that in order to work with this a little bit more easily. But first, let's go ahead and get everything set up in our work area. So let's be sure we go to Window, in Workspace, make sure Essentials is chosen. If it's not, check it. And then go back to Window, Workspace, and reset Essentials. This way, all of our palettes and everything will be the same. So what I see on my screen, you should see on your screen. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add another layer. And it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to leave the bottom layer, the transparent layer. We're going to use this second layer to add some color so that you can see an effect that you're supposed to see. But before we do that, go ahead and zoom in on the picture by hitting Control+. If you hit Control 0, the screen will come in full size in your window, and you can even go in further. Now you can see the gray and white checkerboard pattern. Again, that's indicating transparency. Those gray and white pixels are not really there. It's completely empty. But in order to actually see a grid that we want to see, we need to actually add some color to this layer. So go ahead in your color picker area in the foreground color, click on that, and just choose a very pale gray color. And again, we're not going to keep this at the end, but we need it for now. Now you have two choices. You could either find your paint bucket tool, which if you don't see it, it's probably hidden by the gradient tool, and you could just dump paint here, or the shortcut for that is to hold the Alt key down on your keyboard and hit backspace. And now I filled it with a light gray, and now you're going to notice, I'm going to zoom in even further, you can see these little individual, let me get off my paint bucket, these little individual squares. This is a pixel. Each of these squares is 1 pixel wide. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick my paintbrush here for a moment. And I'm going to reduce my size a little bit. I'm just going to paint, I'm going to just make it black. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see something here. I'm just going to paint a black swatch here. So you can see, if I zoom way out to its 100% size, it just looks like a black line. But if we zoom way in on it, we see that it's not really a black line at all. It is several shades of black. So Photoshop is trying to smooth this out to not make it look so like chunky, I guess would be the word that we're looking for. It's probably not chunky, but that's what I'm going to go with. But Photoshop assumes that's what we want, but that's not what we want at all. We want, in pixel art, we don't want any sort of feathering or lightening. We want the actual colors, the hard edges. You actually want that when you're doing pixel art. So we are not going to use the brush tool for this. So I'm going to go back, open my history tool, and I'm going to go back right before I started doing the brush tool. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the brush tool. And we're going to select the pencil tool. And then in the top area here, we want our pencil tool to be exactly 1 pixel wide. I'll show you if it's a little bit bigger. That's too big. So this is a 40 pixel wide pencil, and notice when I painted with that, the edges are hard and rigid and things like that. You can see that. So this is what we want, except we don't want our pencil to be this big. So again, I'm going to go back in my history, choose it right before I did that. We want to set it to exactly 1 pixel wide. And if I zoom in now, you can see that the brush, being 1 pixel wide, will fill in these little squares. If you click in between a square, it's going to pick the one square to fill in, because again, we are down to the actual pixel size here. So you can't really cross through these. There's no information between those. All right, let's talk about your eraser tool for just a moment. So find your eraser, and here it is right here. Now with the eraser tool, what we're going to want, we're going to kind of want to do the same thing with the eraser tool. We're going to want the eraser tool to be 1 pixel, but then what you need to choose, the mode that you need to choose up here, choose pencil, and again, our eraser tool will erase like that. Now, the thing is, I don't want to erase the gray, so again, I'm going to go back before I did all of that, and everything's fine. But now our eraser is set up if we need it when we start painting. All right, we need to bring in the image that we're going to work with, so you should have it open. Once it's open, you're going to copy it. So I'm doing Control A, or I could go Select All, and then I'm going to go Control C for copy, or I could go Edit Copy, and then I'm going to go back to my image, and I'm going to paste it in. Control V or Edit Paste. Now it's going to look like nothing happened probably, and the reason for that is we're pasting an image in that's much bigger than the one that we have. It's much bigger than the one that's in there. It's so big it's actually, you can't see it right now. So we're going to transform this, hit Control T, make sure you're on that layer that we just pasted. So that's the size of the image I just brought in. And what I want to do now is go ahead and shrink it down. I'm going to zoom in here. Control plus again to zoom. And I just want to shrink it down until it fits in the window. Now it's going to look very pixelated and grainy. That's fine. We're going to use that as sort of our template in order to start painting this in. This is a great time to save, so let's go File, Save. And again, we want to save to the cloud. If it's trying to save it to your computer, choose Cloud. It should be giving us the name. We're going to go ahead and click Save to that. And now we're just about ready to get started. So what we need to do here is we're going to add the layer that we're actually going to paint on. We're not going to paint on any of the layers that we have here now, so I'm going to hit the plus sign for another layer. Now the one thing I'm going to say next is that I like to have the image under the layer that I'm painting on. Many of the tutorials I saw, they like to have it above and then turn the opacity down of it and then be sure you're painting on the layer below it. I'm not a fan of that, but you might end up switching back and forth during the project, and I'll kind of show you that as we're working here. But I'm gonna start with the layer that I'm working on as the top layer. So I'm always want to be sure that this is the layer that's selected because this is the layer I want to be painting on. I'm using layer 3 in my case as my guide to help me know where to put the pixels. All right, this is going to be easiest in this if you decide on a few colors that you're definitely going to use in your project right now. So let's go ahead and do that. So I know I'm going to use black in my project. So I'm going to click on the pencil tool. And I have black set already, but if I click on it, I'm able to choose a color. And all I'm going to do is off to the side, just do a little swatch of black. You'll see why in a minute. I did blue for my practice one, but I'm not feeling blue anymore. So I think I'm going to go in the orange family because orange is one of my favorite colors. So I'm going to do a little orange swatch here. For this project, for pixel art, it often looks better if you take another color that's very similar to your main color. So my main color is going to be orange. So if I pick it like a darker orange to kind of put some shading in, that usually looks pretty good. I definitely am going to want white in this project. Now these are my colors. You don't have to pick these same colors. And you can always add or remove colors depending on what you want to do. And let's do one more color. I think I'll do like a red. And again, you can do as many as you want. And these should just be off to the side. We're eventually going to get rid of them, but they're there. It's almost like when you use a, I don't know what you call it, when you paint and what is it called when you have the paints on it and you put your brush in it? That's kind of what we're doing here. All right, so again, make sure that we're on the pencil tool. Make sure that we have 1 pixel as the size of our artwork, and we're good to go. So in order to switch colors on our pencil, the nice thing is if you hold the Alt key down, notice how my cursor is turned into a little eyedropper. So I can then click on a color, and it will select that color. What you're seeing, the circle that you're seeing is the bottom is the color that you used to have. The top is the one that you're going to switch to. So you can kind of see what color you had and what color you're going to. I'm going to go ahead and start with black, and I'm just going to do an outline. And I'm going to, again, I'm using the pixels on the image below as kind of my guide for this. Now, the one thing I'm going to tell you as I'm doing this is I'm not going to have you sit and watch me do this entire project. I'm going to go over the basics, and then I'm going to do a little special editing technique where I go much faster to finish. So basically, I've got my outline here. You may or may not do an outline. You might not decide not to do one. But all I'm going to do now is just start picking my colors and start painting in the colors onto my layer. And again, it's good to use a similar color. See where there's like shadows here in mine? And you kind of use the darker color, even though it's in the family, kind of as the shadows. So I'm doing that here. Switching back to this and painting those over. And then what you want to do periodically is keep turning the visibility of the layer below on and off so you can tell where you still need to fill in pixels. Because you might think you already painted these black pixels in around the eyes, for example, but I hadn't yet. And again, you just keep switching. So I'm going to make the irises. Is it iris? Iris. I'm going to make those red. I'm going to surround them with white. All right, so at this point, I don't really think, until you're done coloring, I don't think there's much more you need to hear from me. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to finish this, and this is going to go pretty quickly on your screen if I can figure out how to do that in the program that I use. All right, but it should be zooming right about now. Okay, so there it is. There's my finished clip art. So if I turn off my background layer as well as the gray layer, you can see that it's on its own transparent background now. So let's talk about how we finish this up. So first thing is we don't need these colors over here anymore. We could erase them, but we also, in my image, I have a lot of empty space. We're going to get rid of that. If I would ever want to bring this into a video game, the size of this image, even though these pixels are transparent, would end up being what's called a hitbox. So if this was a character that was chasing, if this was a bad guy chasing the good guy, technically it wouldn't even need to touch it. Like this edge of it, the left edge of it would could touch the character and cause a collision detection in a video game, for example. So we're going to want to crop this quite a bit. So I'm going to go to my crop tool. It's this one right here. If you do a long press and don't see it, so where it looks like kind of some corners crossing. And what you do with this is when you select it, you just grab these little handles, and I'm just going to bring this in as close to the edges of the image as I can. And once I like it, I can either hit the check mark or enter. So that's pretty good. I probably would bring it in a little bit more over here, but I'm pretty happy with this right now. This will be just fine. All right, so now the thing is, this actual size of this image, if you wanted to get this printed on a t-shirt or add it to a project, it's really small. This is it at 100%. So what we need to do is make it a little bit bigger now that we've done it as pixel art, but we have to be careful when we resize the image here so that Photoshop doesn't accidentally sort of do what it wants to do, which is smooth out the edges and make them look less jagged. We actually want them to be jagged. That's part of this technique in this project. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to image, image size. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's do a save, yeah? So let's save. Okay, so now we're good to go. So we're going to go to image, image size. So you can see my image right now is 0.36 centimeters. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to make it a little bit larger. So for resample, yours probably says automatic. We do not want that. So we're going to click on that. We're going to choose nearest neighbor hard edges. That will keep the hard edges on our image and make it still look like pixel art. Now as far as the size, let's just go ahead and switch this to pixels. So you can see mine is 43 by 56. You might say, why isn't it 64 by 64? That's because I cropped it. So it's a little bit smaller now. So let's just go ahead and I would say, actually, you know what? Let's do inches. And let's just go ahead and make it, let's do 4 inches for width. 4 by 5, that's not too bad. Don't worry about this preview right here. Let's click OK. And I'm going to zoom out now. I'm actually going to do Control 0 to put it in the window. And so this now is the actual size of the image. Notice that it is still retains those hard edges and looks just like a video game character. All right, so let's do one more save. Now let's talk about turning this project in. If you just want to turn it in for a grade, just do the normal file, save a copy, save it to your computer as a JPEG. That's fine. But if you want to retain transparency in this image, you're going to want to save it as a PNG, and you're going to want to make sure, so you can see we still have these layers here. We're going to leave these right now, but what we want to do is make sure that the layer that has our image and the gray layer are not visible. Make sure they are not visible. I can even take the visibility of the bottom layer off as well and just leave this top layer. So that's the only one that the eye icon is on. And again, so I would do File, Save a Copy. I would save it to the computer, but I would select PNG now as my choice because PNG will hold transparency, and click Save. And then you have this file with transparency to use in future projects. All right, good work. I can't wait to see what you guys make.